At my daughter's engagement banquet, my niece from the second branch, Gu Yufu, deliberately stumbled and fell into the water. Soaked through and exposed, she was carried ashore by my daughter's fiancé, General Shen Jingxiu, in front of everyone. Gu Yufu, all pitiful and tearful, kowtowed and begged, "Aunt, my reputation is ruined. Please let me have the general's hand in marriage instead." In my past life, I was so furious I spat blood, and rather than lose this engagement, I forced her to shave her head and become a nun. I guarded the betrothal with everything I had. I thought the war god general, who swore to never look at another woman, would surely protect my daughter. But I never imagined that within just 2 years of marrying into the frontier garrison, my daughter would become nothing but a handful of dust on that desolate border. Now, looking at this pair acting like star-crossed lovers, I feel no anger at all. I pulled out the unsigned marriage contract and tore it to shreds in front of everyone. Fine. I looked at her shocked face and smiled. Since you're willing to throw your life away to marry into the frontier, I'll grant your wish. The torn pieces of the contract scattered across the hall, and everyone was stunned into silence. Gu Yufu knelt on the ground, the glee on her face not yet hidden, mixed with her fake pitiful act, making her look absolutely revolting. Shen Jingxiu held her, his arms stiffening slightly, his gaze landing on me. "Aunt Gu, I acted out of urgency to save her today. If I've overstepped, I hope you'll forgive me. But this engagement is a matter between 2 families. It's not proper for you to break it unilaterally." He spoke with such righteousness, and the Gu Yufu in his arms pressed herself closer to his chest like a frightened little bird. I didn't even look at him, just raised a hand to summon my trusted maid. "Go get my daughter's birth certificate and return it to the Shen family." Shen Jingxiu's face darkened. "Aunt Gu, think carefully. This engagement was something your family begged for." "That's right, we begged for it. And today, we're giving it up. General, you saved her so thoroughly that the whole capital will sing your praises. If my family still clings to this engagement, we'd look like we don't know our place." I paused, then looked at the soaked woman in his arms. "But General, your method of rescue was hardly proper. You had a whole courtyard full of servants, yet you insisted on jumping in yourself. Those who know you'd say you're a hero. Those who don't might think you and my niece planned this little scene together." Shen Jingxiu's expression changed drastically, and he stared at me for a long moment. Gu Yufu had been crying since I appeared, and now she sobbed even harder, struggling out of Shen Jingxiu's arms to kneel and crawl toward me. "Aunt, you can think whatever you want of me, but you cannot slander the general's good name. It was my own fault for losing my footing. The general was just being kind. If you must blame someone, blame me. He knew nothing." I looked down at her and said flatly, "Why would I blame you? You're willing to gamble your life on a man. That's so sincere of you, I should give you a dowry myself." Gu Yufu froze, tears hanging on her lashes, about to fall. My sister-in-law from the second branch, seeing the tense atmosphere, quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Sister-in-law, since the contract is torn, let's discuss this later. Yufu is young and foolish, she's scared the guests. I'll take her back to change clothes now." I turned unhurriedly and looked at the old madam, whose expression was shifting between anger and uncertainty as she sat on the high seat. "Mother, you saw what happened today. The main branch has called off the engagement. If General Shen is willing, he's free to approach the second branch with a proposal. The daughters of the Gu family are precious. We can't let someone just hold them for free." The old madam pounded her cane hard, her chest heaving. "You are the matriarch of this household. How dare you make a scene over something as important as a marriage contract?" I let out a soft laugh. Mother, it wasn't Sure who was carried. The main branch's engagement is mine to decide. I turned around, not sparing them another glance, and walked straight into the inner hall. Behind me, I heard Gu Yufu's low sobbing and Shen Jingxiu's voice, barely containing his anger. With Gu Shuqing acting like this marriage is off. I didn't turn around. In my last life, I felt the same way, shaking with rage, wishing I could tear Gu Yufu to pieces. But I held back, thinking the Hofu's reputation couldn't be tarnished, and my daughter's name couldn't be ruined. I endured it. And what was the result? My daughter died at the border, poisoned, not even allowed to send a letter home before she died. She was buried in the wind and sand, without even a grave marker. Meanwhile, Gu Yufu, as the general's beloved, lived comfortably at the border. This time around, anyone who wants to swallow that humiliation can go ahead. I'm done with it. Back in my daughter's courtyard, Sure was already sitting up, staring blankly out the window. I walked over and smoothed her tangled hair. Mother, I heard the commotion from the front yard. She bit her lip. Did General Shen leave? He's gone. My tone was light. I had someone send the betrothal papers back to the Shen family. Sure was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, Mother, do you know something? My hands paused. Last night, I had a very long dream. I dreamed I married into the borderlands. Shen Jingxiu forced me to draw diagrams, forced me to modify the crossbow, and in the end, he made me drink a bowl of medicine. I dreamed I died in a very cold room, with yellow sand swirling outside, and not a soul around. My heart clenched. A dream. Memories from my past life were seeping into her mind in the form of a dream. I took her hand. It was ice cold. That's heaven's way of warning you, this marriage is a pit of fire. Her lips trembled, and tears rolled down. Mother, could something like that really happen? I didn't answer. I just pulled her into my arms and gently patted her back. As long as I'm here, that kind of thing will never happen again in this life. 02. The fallout from breaking the engagement was bigger than I expected. Within half a day, the whole capital was buzzing. They said the eldest branch of the Gu family had lost their minds, turning down a war hero general, tearing up the marriage contract in public and handing a perfect match to the second branch. Even worse, rumors started that Gu Shuqing had been improper before marriage, and that General Shen had caught her red-handed, which was why she was so desperate to call it off. I sent people to investigate. The rumors traced back to the second branch. Qiu Tang, the second madam's senior maid, had gone out early that morning to a rouge shop and spent half the day gossiping with a group of purchasing maids from various households. I brought her to the side hall with the housekeeper's ledger in hand. Qiu Tang knelt on the ground, still defiant. Madam, I just went to buy a box of rouge and chatted a bit. I didn't say anything. Buying rouge at 3 shops. That took 2 hours. When did the second branch's purchasing become so meticulous? She tried to argue more, but I wasn't interested. I nodded to the matron beside me. Take her to the back courtyard and question her properly. 2 sturdy women dragged her out. It didn't take long before she confessed everything. The second madam had instructed her to spread rumors about Shu'er. The implication was clear, they wanted to pin the broken engagement entirely on Shu'er. I let out a cold laugh. The second branch moved fast because they were afraid Shen Jingxiu would change his mind. If they dragged the first branch's reputation through the mud first, the Shen family would have no choice but to seek a match with the second branch. It was underhanded, but effective. Too bad they forgot one thing. I've lived a second life, and I hold far more cards than they can see. That evening, I had Xiao He, Gu Yufu's personal maid, brought in. Xiao He dropped to her knees the moment she entered, trembling violently. "Madam, I really don't know anything about Mrs. Affairs." I leisurely played with the jade bracelet on my wrist and asked, "The clothes she wore when she fell into the water today, you prepared them?" Xiao He nodded. "That outfit, the sash was specially made, wasn't it? It loosens when wet and comes apart with a tug. Did your miss come up with that idea herself, or did someone teach her?" Xiao He's face went pale in an instant. "Your brother works for the second branch's steward. Last month, he withdrew 100 taels of silver from the accounts under the second branch's name. The second branch doesn't know about that yet, do they?" Xiao He's head shot up, her eyes wide with shock. Madam, please spare me. I'll tell you everything. If you confess clearly, I'll pretend I never knew about your past dealings." Xiao He burst into tears, kowtowing repeatedly. I got the confession I wanted. But that wasn't all, she also revealed an old, buried secret. Gu Yufu's birth mother had gotten into the second master's arms through a staged, accidental fall into the water, which led to her being brought into the household as a noble concubine. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I blew on the ink to dry it, then tucked the confession into my sleeve. I wouldn't use it yet, I'd wait for the right moment. The next day, the second branch made their move. The second master himself went to the Shen residence to see Shen Jingxiu, hinting that he should give his daughter proper recognition. That same day, Shen Jingxiu came to our door, asking to see me. I sent word back, the main branch has no marriage ties with the Shen family. If the general is here for the second branch, please use the west side gate and speak with the second master. His letter was returned unopened. I heard he stood at the gate for a full half-hour, his face dark as thunder. When Shu'er heard, she grew uneasy. "Mother, if he really marries Gu Yufu, he'll become the second branch's prized son-in-law. Our main branch." I cut her off. "Shu'er, do you think Shen Jingxiu actually respects the second branch? He came today because he can't stand losing. He's used to having a family he can control, and suddenly they don't care about him. That stings." Shu'er looked half convinced. I took her hand, pulled out the repeating crossbow design she'd drawn that night, and spread it out before her. "Forget about those men. I found you a shop on East Side Artisan Street. Tomorrow, I'll take you to see it. Your grandfather left behind a group of old craftsmen, they're still around. From now on, focus on building your crossbows. I'll have your back." Her eyes lit up. "Mother, you're letting me open a shop." "What? Afraid people will laugh?" She shook her head firmly, a spark of life in her eyes I'd never seen before. "Mother, I want to go." Night wind rustled the window paper. I stood in the corridor, looking toward the second branch's quarters. Those mother and daughter were probably cutting wedding gowns with glee right now. Go ahead and marry. But the things you schemed so hard to take, I'll make you return them on your knees. Later, Shen Jingxiu's mother arrived with lavish gifts, heading straight to the old madam. By the time I reached Rongshu Hall, laughter was already flowing inside. Shen's mother sat in the guest seat, bolts of fine fabric and a box of jewelry at her side. The old madam sat at the head, her brows relaxed, an unusual smile on her face. "Qingrong, you're here." The old madam waved me over. "We were just talking about you. Jingxiu is a good boy. He says the marriage can be reconsidered. As for Yufu, he admits he was wrong, but since he's already held her, the second branch expects a resolution. His idea is to marry both as primary wives, no distinction. I stopped mid-step and looked at Shen's mother. She quickly rose, reaching for my hand with feigned warmth. Madam Gu, I know you're upset. But Jingxiu has earned his reputation on the battlefield. Who in the capital doesn't respect him? What happened that day was rash, and I've come today to apologize. Just give the children a way out. Shu'er will be the eldest daughter-in-law, and Yufu can be a co-wife. They'll be like sisters, how wonderful. I pulled my hand back and took a step away. Madam Shen, the marriage contract is already torn. The main branch has no further ties with the Shen family. If you're here for the second branch, follow their rules. The main branch won't be involved. Shen's mother's smile froze. The old lady tapped her cane. Qingrong, don't be ungrateful. The Shen family is willing to come back, that's doing the main branch a favor. I looked at her, my tone respectful but my words leaving no room for negotiation. Mother, Shu'er's dignity was trampled the moment Shen Jingxiu publicly carried Gu Yufu into his arms. If we send her there now, to share a husband with another woman, how can she ever hold her head up again? Shen's mother's face flushed with embarrassment. She said awkwardly, Madam Gu, that's not how you should see it. Jingxiu is destined for greatness. If Shu'er follows him, how could she be wronged? I smiled softly. Madam Shen, you're a woman too. If General Shen had taken a second wife back then, and you had to call her sister, would you have been happy about it? I turned to the old lady. Mother, I alone decide matters for the main branch. This engagement is over, and it stays over. If the Shen family insists on a match, they can marry the second branch's niece in grand style. Shu'er has better prospects elsewhere. With that, I gave Shen's mother a slight bow and left Rongshu Hall. Behind me, I heard the dull thud of the old lady's cane striking the floor and Shen's mother's stifled snort of anger. I didn't look back. That evening, word came from the second branch. Shen Jingxiu had agreed to take Gu Yufu in, not as a wife, but as a concubine. Not even a secondary wife. The second branch's madam was so furious she smashed a few teacups, and Gu Yufu cried half the night. When I heard the news, I was at the desk, sketching the layout for Shu'er's shop. Shu'er looked up and asked in a low voice, Mother, will Gu Yufu marry him? Yes. I didn't lift my head. She's invested too much to back out now. Even as a concubine, she'll marry him with joy. But she didn't even care about being the main wife before. Why is she? I set down my brush and looked at her. Because she has no way out. Her reputation is ruined after that public fall into the water. If Shen Jingxiu won't take her, she'll end up in a temple. So don't be fooled by her tears. She's not crying over the status, she's putting on a show. Shu'er seemed to understand. Shu'er, remember this. I said seriously, some men are never worth it from the start. If you don't fight, they think you're weak. If you do, they say you're not generous enough. The most satisfying way to deal with them is to make sure they can never find your door again. I went back to my drawing. On the paper, a bright, spacious shopfront was taking shape. That would be the beginning of Shu'er's new life. A few days later, Shen Jingxiu came personally to pick up Gu Yufu. A pink sedan chair, a few trunks. No music, no banquet. If not for the 2 red lanterns hanging at the gate, you'd hardly know a wedding was happening. Gu Yufu wore a water-red wedding dress, a red veil covering her face, and was helped into the sedan by Xiaohe. I stood by the side gate, watching the sedan disappear into the distance. The second branch's madam was wiping her tears nearby, muttering curses about the Shen family's lack of decency. When she saw me, she put on a mournful expression. Sister-in-law, look, Yufu was married off like this, without even a proper ceremony. General Shen really looks down on our Gu family. I looked at her and said slowly, isn't this exactly what you wanted? The second branch's madam froze, about to speak, but I'd already walked away. As I passed the second branch's quarters, I heard faint laughter from inside, the second master. He was drinking with someone, boasting that now that his daughter had married into the general's household, the second branch could hold its head high in the capital. I kept my eyes on the ground, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Hold their heads high. His son-in-law is a man who could personally starve his first wife to death. Let him enjoy his pride. When that man has stripped his daughter to the bone, he'll find out what it really means to lose all dignity. Back in my room, I picked up my brush and wrote a letter to my elder brother, far away in Jiangnan. It's time to put my mother's guard back to work. There are things I need people to dig up. Shen Jingxiu's old subordinates in the northwest, his hidden assets, and where exactly my daughter's dowry ended up after he swallowed it, I need all of it unearthed, piece by piece. This game has only just begun. Once the shop was secured, I took Shu'er to meet the old craftsman my grandfather had left behind. The moment they saw the repeating crossbow design Shu'er produced, their eyes went wide. The eldest craftsman, with white hair, held the blueprint with both hands as if it were a royal decree, his lips trembling as he asked, "Did you draw this, miss?" Shu'er nodded. The old man dropped to his knees with a thud, tears streaming down his weathered face. Our old master always said he had a granddaughter with extraordinary talent. If she ever took up engineering, she'd rival any man. Seeing this design today, I can die without regrets. Shu'er was startled and hurried to help him up. Please, master craftsman, get up. I'm still young and need your guidance. The old man rose, wiped his tears, and pounded his chest. Don't worry, miss. With us old-timers holding down this shop, no one's going to outshine our craft. Watching this scene, I felt a deep ache in my chest. In my last life, if only I had guided her down this path sooner, she wouldn't have died at Shen Jingxiu's hands. The shop was named Jinggong Workshop, specializing in military equipment improvements. At first, no one came. The nobles of the capital looked down on a workshop run by a woman. The few who did drop by were mostly there for a laugh. I knew we just needed one chance for Shu'er to prove herself. So I turned my attention to the Ministry of War. At the time, the court was scrambling to update weapons for the northwestern border army. The northern barbarians had adopted new cavalry tactics, and the old crossbows didn't have enough range. The border defenses were stretched thin. The Ministry of War offered a reward. Anyone who could design effective new military equipment would receive 10,000 taels of silver and an official post. When the news reached Shu'er, she was polishing a part in the workshop. Her file stopped mid-stroke. Mother, I want to try. I'd been waiting for her to say that. Go ahead. I'll be right there with you. For the next 2 months, Shu'er practically lived at the workshop. She and the old craftsman ran endless tests, refining the crossbow's sight and trigger mechanism until they'd boosted the range by 30%. The day the blueprints were sent to the Ministry of War, the veteran generals reviewing them assumed they came from a major workshop. When they learned they were the work of a 17-year-old girl from a noble household, the entire room erupted in astonishment. The ministry's director personally came to the workshop to see the finished product. After a test firing, he held the crossbow with new respect, his gaze on Shu'er completely changed. Miss Gu, if this crossbow can be mass-produced, the northwestern defenses will hold for at least another 3 years. I'll personally recommend you for merit. Shu'er stood in the courtyard, sunlight falling on her face. She turned to look at me, eyes slightly red. I nodded at her. Her path was beginning to brighten. But just as the ministry was preparing to report the matter up the chain, an anonymous accusation letter landed on the minister's desk. It claimed that Jingong Workshop had stolen military blueprints that Shen Jingxiu had improved during his time in the Northwest, and that they were taking credit for his work, a crime tantamount to deceiving the emperor. When Shu'er heard the news, she trembled with fury. Mother, I drew those designs myself. I've barely even met Shen Jingxiu. How could I have stolen anything from him? I placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Don't panic. Let me handle this. I'd seen this coming. Shen Jingxiu wasn't going to sit back and watch Shu'er slip out of his grasp. He just picked the dumbest possible move. I sent people to trace the source of that letter, and the answer came back quickly. It was written by one of Shen Jingxiu's old military subordinates, a man who now held a minor clerk position at the Ministry of War. The key detail: he worked at the ministry, yet he was still in close, secret contact with Shen Jingxiu. Shen Jingxiu probably forgot that my mother ran a network of informants in the capital for years. It was discreet, but it was everywhere. I had one of the letters between that clerk and Shen Jingxiu intercepted. In it, Shen Jingxiu had written in his own hand, "Find a pretext to suppress Gu Shuqing's weapon designs. If you can't suppress them, then turn the fire on her. A woman from a respectable family accused of treason won't survive." Holding that letter, my fingertips went cold. Back at the border, this was exactly how Shen Jingxiu operated. Utterly vicious. I didn't rush to report him. Instead, I had the letter copied and secretly slipped into the Minister of War's study. 3 days later, officials came and took that clerk away. In prison, he confessed to who was behind it all. His testimony pointed straight at Shen Jingxiu. The Minister of War personally submitted a memorial accusing Shen Jingxiu of envying talent, framing a colleague, and attempting to deceive the throne. The night that memorial went up, the city saw its first snowfall of winter. I stood under the eaves, watching snowflakes fall on the roof of Shu'er's workshop. Inside, she was brewing tea for the old craftsman. Her laughter rang clear and bright, like the only warm spot in that snowy night. "Anyone who tries to destroy my daughter's talent, I'll destroy their future first." 05. After the memorial was submitted, the palace stayed silent for a long time. But the Shen household was in chaos. Shen Jingxiu was suspended pending investigation. He stayed cooped up in the mansion, his temper spiraling, lashing out at servants at the slightest provocation. They said Gu Yufu brought him ginseng soup one night, and he kicked the tray out of her hands. Scalding soup splashed all over her, but she didn't dare even cry. When I heard, I thought she deserved it. But things were far from over. Half a month later, an imperial decree summoned me and Shu'er to the palace. Shu'er was so nervous her palms were sweating. I fastened her cloak for her. In the imperial study, Emperor Jingyuan sat behind the desk, flipping through the weapon blueprints. The Minister of War and several senior officials stood below. Shen Jingxiu had also been summoned. He knelt to the side, his face ashen. The emperor ordered Shu'er to draw the design on the spot. She knelt at the desk and started drawing. Within the time it takes to burn half a stick of incense, a complete structural diagram appeared on the paper. Clean lines, clear annotations. The senior officials passed it around and nodded in approval. The emperor then had Shen Jingxiu's border weapon designs brought out. Side by side, apart from some basic standard specifications, the core structure and the thinking behind the improvements were completely different. Shen Jingxiu, what do you have to say for yourself? Shen Jingxiu prostrated himself, his voice hoarse. Your Majesty, I admit my guilt. But I only acted out of a moment of folly. I feared that the young lady's inexperience might jeopardize matters of state. I never intended to frame her. I stood off to the side, almost laughing out loud. Afraid she'd mess things up, so you destroy the one person who could get it done. That logic was classic him. The emperor said nothing. He simply had Shen Jingxiu taken away. Then he turned to Shu'er, his tone softening slightly. I hear you're the daughter of the Yong'an Marquis family. You don't seem like it. Shu'er answered calmly, without arrogance or timidity, Your Majesty, I'm just a young woman who enjoys craftsmanship. Serving the country is my duty. The emperor nodded and granted Shu'er an imperial plaque for her workshop, 1,000 taels of silver, and, exceptionally, the status of an external hire for the Ministry of Works, allowing her to participate in improving border weaponry. As we left the palace, the snow had stopped. Once Shu'er got into the carriage, she suddenly threw her arms around me and started crying, muffled sobs. Mother, he said I don't seem like a daughter of the Gu family. I patted her back and smiled. That's a compliment. The Gus are the ones you shouldn't resemble. She laughed through her tears. We got back to the mansion as evening fell. As soon as we entered the inner gate, a maid came to report that the old lady had fallen ill. I paused mid-step. How convenient. I told Shu'er to go rest and headed to Rongshu Hall myself. The old lady lay in bed, her face as pale as gold paper. Second aunt was at her bedside, eyes swollen from crying. Seeing me enter, she rushed over and cried out, Sister-in-law, you're finally back. Mother fell ill from worrying over your affairs. Now that General Shen is in prison, what's to become of our Gu family? I frowned and walked to the bedside. The old lady opened her eyes, her cloudy gaze fixed on me. Are you satisfied now? You've offended the Shen family to the core over some crossbow for a little girl. Do you know who stands behind the Shens? The main branch may have had their revenge, but the entire Gu family will be buried with you. Her voice was laced with bitter resentment. I sat on the edge of the bed and tucked the blanket around her, my voice gentle. Mother, what are you saying? The Gu family is fine. Shu'er has been granted an imperial plaque. Soon, our household might even outshine the Shens. The old lady grabbed my hand, her nails nearly digging into my flesh. You won't be satisfied until you've destroyed us all, will you? I gently pried her fingers away. Mother, if I truly wanted the Gu family ruined, I would have spoken up in front of the emperor today. I didn't, not out of old sentiments, but because I don't think it's come to that yet. So, you'd better not push me. Second aunt screamed from behind. The main branch is turning things upside down. You've driven mother to this state. Do you have no respect for your elders? I glanced back at her. Sister-in-law, save your breath. Instead of yelling, why not find out how your precious son-in-law treats your daughter? Then come talk to me about turning things upside down. Her face turned ashen. I walked out of Rongshu Hall without looking back. 10 days after Shen Jingxiu was imprisoned, urgent news arrived from the border. The northern tribes suddenly launched a massive invasion, breaching 3 cities in a row. The northwestern defense line was in grave danger. The court was shaken. To make matters worse, the military arsenal at the front had failed at this critical moment, a large number of crossbows were damaged, and the new weapons hadn't arrived yet. The defending general sent 12 urgent dispatches, begging the court for immediate reinforcements. The emperor summoned his ministers late into the night to discuss countermeasures. Shu was urgently called to the palace. I escorted her to the palace gate, and she held my hand, saying, "Mother, I'm a little scared." I smoothed her hair. "Don't be. The crossbow you designed is the best in the world. The soldiers at the front are waiting for your work to save their lives. It's those who sit idle and collect their pay who should be scared." She pressed her lips together and turned to step through the palace gates. That night, I sat alone in the manor until dawn. When morning came, Shu returned with news. The emperor had ordered her to accompany the army to the northwest to assist the ordnance department in repairing and improving all the crossbows. My heart skipped a beat. Accompany the army? She looked at me, her gaze resolute. "Mother, I want to go. I want to see with my own eyes how the things I've made defend our land." I was silent for a long time. In her past life, she died in the northwest. In this life, she was going there again. I gripped her hand tightly. "Mother will go with you." She was stunned. "The northwest is bitterly cold, your health. If you can endure it, so can I. Besides, there are old debts to settle there." I didn't say the rest. Shen Jingxiu's former subordinates from the northwest were still there. The dowry he'd swallowed, the military craftsmen he'd driven to death, the embezzled army funds, all of it was still there. But I believed they had done more than just that. The evidence might be scattered in some corner of the northwest. Only by going there myself could I dig it all out. On the day of departure, Gu Yufu suddenly appeared at the city gate. She had lost weight, her face deathly pale. She rushed over and grabbed Shu's horse's reins. "Sister, please, save the general. He's truly innocent. If you just tell the emperor that the whole matter of the drawings was a misunderstanding, he can be released. Please." Shu sat on her horse, looking down at her with a calm gaze. "You're asking the wrong person. Whether he's innocent or not, the court of judicial review will decide. I won't speak for him again." Gu Yufu gave a bitter smile. "So you do hate him. You hate him, so you deliberately set him up." I rode up to her and reined in my horse. "Gu Yufu, you're wrong. We don't hate him. Hate makes people lose their minds. We just don't want him anymore. What you're holding onto like treasure, we threw away long ago." Gu Yufu collapsed onto the ground, her whole body trembling. "You'll regret this. You'll definitely regret this." Without another look at her, I spurred my horse and rode off. Shu followed behind me, silent the whole way. After we'd gone 10 li from the city, she suddenly said, "Mother, she's really pitiful." I turned to look at her. "She's not pitiful. She chose this path, and she has to bear all the consequences. But you can't pity her, because in your dream, she never pitied you." Hearing this, Shu lowered her eyes thoughtfully. A month later, the northwest. The wind in the northwest felt like it blew straight from hell, whipping sand into our faces with a stinging bite. But Shu seemed like she'd come home. She buried herself in the armory workshop, revising blueprints and repairing crossbows day and night. Meanwhile, I quietly got in touch with the people my mother had left behind. They were a few old spies who'd long since gone into hiding. When they saw my token, they knelt and bowed. "Madam, you've finally come. We've been keeping the evidence of Shen Jingxiu's crimes in the northwest for you. They handed me an iron box. When I opened it, inside were a handwritten ledger and a few letters. The ledger recorded how Shen Jingxiu, under the pretext of military supplies, had siphoned off funds from the court's allocations to the army, pocketing them for himself. The amounts were staggering. Those letters were secret correspondence between him and wealthy border merchants, colluding to sell military grain to the northern D. One of them even bore the seal of an eagle's head from a northern D tribe. Holding that iron box, I stood in the vast twilight of the northwest. Some people truly love to do evil. Shu'er walked over and stood beside me. Mother. Is this enough? I closed the box, my voice clear in the wind. Enough. It's time for certain people to be utterly destroyed. 07. The day I returned to the capital, the Northwest saw a great victory. Shu'er's improved crossbows shone on the battlefield, repelling 3 Northern D charges in a row. The army's officers and soldiers jointly submitted a petition, requesting merit for her. The emperor was delighted and, as a special honor, bestowed upon Shu'er the title of Master Artificer, rank 6, allowing her to continue serving in the army. When the news reached the capital, no one in the Gu household dared to make a sound. On the day I returned to the residence, my sister-in-law from the second branch came nervously to pay her respects, saying the old lady wanted to see the main branch to discuss holding a celebration banquet for Shu'er. I smiled, settled Shu'er into her room, and went alone to Rongsho Hall. The old lady was truly ill this time, so thin she was almost unrecognizable. When she saw me, she didn't flare up. She just looked at me with cloudy eyes. The main branch has produced a 6th-rank female official. Quite the prestige. But have you thought about how much harder it'll be for the Gu family in the capital now? Will those noble families tolerate a girl who outshines men? I walked to her bedside and looked at her. Mother, if anyone has a problem, let them come to me. I'll be waiting. The old lady closed her eyes and said nothing more. The next day, I submitted the evidence to the censorate. The left censor-in-chief was a former student of my father. After reading everything, his face turned ashen. It took him a long time to say, Qingrong, have you thought this through? If you submit this, Shen Jingxiu will die, and the Shen family will fall. But those in the court who are close to the Shen family will see you as a mortal enemy. I looked at him calmly and said, do you think they'd spare me if I didn't? He let out a sigh and accepted the iron box. Give me 3 days. I'll present the memorial after that. In those 3 days, the Shen household fell into complete chaos. Shen's mother begged everyone she could, even going to Gu Yufu to ask her to plead with me. Gu Yufu knelt at the entrance to my courtyard and cried for an entire afternoon. Aunt, please spare the general's life. He knows he was wrong. He truly knows. If you just agree, we'll leave the capital immediately and never trouble you again. 3 days later, the censorate submitted the memorial. The entire court was shocked. Shen Jingxiu had embezzled military funds, sold military grain, colluded with the enemy, and killed people to silence them, every charge backed by solid evidence. The emperor flew into a rage and ordered Shen Jingxiu brought from the prison for severe interrogation to extract the names of his accomplices. The Shen family was raided. Gu Yufu was sent back to the Gu family. When she returned, she looked like a walking corpse, her soul completely drained. Her mother wailed and clutched at her, while her father smashed everything in his study. That night, the second master came to my room, his eyes red as he demanded, sister-in-law, even if Shen Jingxiu is guilty, he's still Yufu's husband. By destroying him, aren't you pushing her off a cliff? You're full of complaints, second uncle. Did I order Shen Jingxiu to embezzle funds or betray the country? You arranged that marriage by trickery. Who pushed Yu Fu down this path, Shen Jingxiu, or you yourselves? His face turned pale, and he stormed out, slamming the door. A month later, Shen Jingxiu was executed. On the day of his execution, the entire capital turned out to watch. After Shen Jingxiu's death, undercurrents stirred in the court. The remnants of the Shen faction began to counterattack. They didn't dare go after Shu'er openly, so they used the old argument, women holding office violates ancestral tradition. Several censors submitted memorials demanding Shu'er's position be revoked. 3 times the memorials were submitted, and 3 times the emperor shelved them. But I knew it was only temporary. The emperor was waiting for Shu'er to achieve something even more impressive. After the great victory in the northwest, Shu'er returned to the capital to report on her work. I saw she had lost a lot of weight, and her hands were covered in frostbite and scars. "Mother, it doesn't hurt," she said, hiding her hands behind her back. I took her hands and ordered warm water brought, then cleaned and dressed her wounds bit by bit. These scars should be seen by those who need to see them. The more you hide them, the more they think they can push you around. When Shu'er went back to the palace to report, the emperor asked what reward she wanted. She said, "I want nothing, Your Majesty. I only ask that you give the women of this realm a path to earn a living by their own skills." The entire court fell silent. The emperor was quiet for a long time, then issued a decree. Shu'er would enter the Ministry of Works as a master artificer to oversee military innovation. He also established the Master Artificer Academy for Women, with Shu'er as its head, recruiting women from across the land to study engineering and craftsmanship. When the news spread, it shook the world. Some cursed, some praised. But more people watched in silence, waiting to see how far this Gu girl could go. The second branch of the Gu family fell completely silent. The second master resigned from his clan duties and shut himself in. The second mistress stopped causing trouble and would hide whenever she saw me. Gu Yufu was sent to a nunnery outside the city, officially to rest, but in truth, the family had abandoned her. I visited her once at the nunnery. She wore plain robes and knelt before the Buddha. When she heard my footsteps, she turned and looked at me with hollow eyes. "You won." I stood behind her, gazing at the eternal flame before the Buddha. "I never saw you as a rival. The person I needed to defeat was never you." She gave a bitter smile. "Right. You even killed Shen Jingxiu. What am I compared to that? He deserved to die." My voice was soft. "But you didn't. You were just foolish, staking your whole life on a man who would devour you." She stared at me, tears silently streaming down her face. "And, you never intended for Shu'er to marry him from the start, did you?" "Correct. But if you hadn't stepped forward that day, I wouldn't have had a reason to break the engagement. So I should thank you. You made Shu'er see that he wasn't worth it." Outside, snow fell silently. Back at the manor, Shu'er was sketching in the study. Seeing me return, she looked up and smiled. "Mother, I'm planning to open a branch workshop in the west of the city. There are many poor women there. I want them to learn a trade, so they don't have to rely on marriage to survive." "Good. I'll fund it. But there's one condition: from today on, I'll have no hand in any of your businesses. You need to learn to stand on your own." She looked at me, her eyes glistening. "Mother, are you leaving?" I smiled and ruffled her hair. "I'm not leaving. I just think it's time I lived for myself for a change." I really did need to live for myself. In my previous life, I lived to 46. The first 18 years, I was a daughter, married off to the Gu family for an alliance. The next 28 years, I was a wife and mother, managing the household accounts and keeping everyone fed and clothed. In the end, my daughter died, my husband was cold, and all my in-laws cared about was my shops and silver. I bought a small courtyard next to the precision workshop. The front yard I turned into a clinic, treating women from poor families. The backyard was for living. Gu Mingzhang, my husband, had been an official in court for years and rarely came home. When he heard I'd moved out of the Marquis Manor, he just sent a letter. It read, "Qingrong, what does this do to the Gu family's reputation?" I had the letter sent back, with 4 words appended, "See you at the divorce papers." He never wrote again. But Shu'er sent a letter from the northwest. "Mother, I've heard you left the manor. I just want to say, you should have done it long ago. I'm doing well here. Next spring, I'd like to bring you to see the flowers." What flowers could there be in the northwest? But that letter made me hold it and cry for half an hour. After spring began, something happened in the capital, not huge, but noticeable. Yong'an Marquis Gu Mingzhang was impeached by a censor for harboring relatives and mismanaging the household. He was fined 3 months' salary and demoted half a rank. Someone told me the memorial was backed by remnants of the Shen family's faction. They couldn't touch Shu'er, so they went after her father, hoping to throw the Gu family into chaos from within. Sure enough, Gu Mingzhang came to see me that very day. "Qingrong, people in court are targeting the Gu family now. You moved out easily, but if the Gu family falls, you'll be dragged down too. Come back. Without you at the manor, there's too much I can't handle." I stood at the door, looking at this man I'd never truly understood. "Gu Mingzhang, I married you at 18. Do you know that in the first year of our marriage, your mother took over my dowry shops? The year I gave birth to Shu'er, you took a concubine. When Shu'er was 6, the second branch called her a useless girl in public, and you said nothing. All these years, you've been cautious at court and ignored everything at home. You say you can't handle it. I handled it for 18 years. Now it's your turn." His face turned ugly. "Qingrong, why bring up old scores? The family is in trouble now. If the family is in trouble, go to your concubines, go to your mother. I've already drafted the divorce papers. You either sign them, or I'll ask the clan elders to decide. Choose." He stared at me as if I were a stranger. I had a servant hand him the prepared divorce papers. He took them, read for a moment, but in the end didn't sign. Must you be this heartless? The heartless one is you. You never treated me as a wife. You just needed someone to manage the household, bear your children, and keep up appearances. Well, that woman is done." I turned and walked into the courtyard, closing the door behind me. When Shu'er returned to the capital and learned of this, she said only one thing. "Mother, you did the right thing. This family stopped deserving you a long time ago." I smiled and nodded. That girl is becoming more and more like me. Another spring came around. The Fine Craft Women's Academy opened its doors. The first batch had 30 students, ranging from 12 to 25, most of them from poor backgrounds. Shu'er taught there herself, and I'd drop by occasionally to lecture on medicine and teach the girls how to care for their own bodies. Those old pedants at court kept calling us hens crowing at dawn. I had those words copied onto paper and pasted on the academy's walls. The girls who came to study saw them and stood up straighter, one by one. Madam, we're not afraid of being scolded. The harder they curse, the more scared they are. The one who said that was a girl who'd fled back from the border. She was only 16, a year younger than Shu'er. There was a scar on her face, from a northern raider's blade. She told me her parents were dead, and she'd escaped to the capital alone, nearly starving to death. The fine craft workshop took her in, gave her food to eat and a skill to learn. Madam, I want to stay and become a teacher here. I want to help more girls like me make something of themselves. I patted her hand. Good. You stay. From now on, this academy needs you to hold it up. That spring, near its end, Shu'er was heading northwest again. This time, she went as the Ministry of Work's special envoy to oversee the rearmament of the entire northwestern defense line. Before she left, she came to my little courtyard for a meal. Mother, I'll write to you often. I'll tell you both the good and the bad. No more pretending everything's fine. I laughed. Go on. I'll keep an eye on the academy and the shop for you here in the capital. You focus on your work. She nodded, rose, and took her leave. I walked her to the gate and watched her figure disappear at the end of the long street. 3 months later, news of victory arrived. Shu'er hadn't only completed the rearmament in the northwest, she'd also designed a lightweight repeating crossbow that fired 3 times faster than the old models. The northwestern garrison used it to crush the northern tribe's main force, cutting down over 10,000 enemy soldiers. The tribal king's court moved 300 li west. The emperor was overjoyed and conferred on Shu'er the title, Marquis of Fine Craft. A woman being enfeoffed as a marquis had never happened in this dynasty. In a letter from the northwest, Shu'er wrote, Mother, your daughter is a marquis now. What makes me happiest is that the soldiers in the northwest say my work really saves lives. That's enough for me to feel this life was worth it. I read the letter while sitting under the eaves, sunlight spilling all over me. Gu Mingzhang saw the official bulletin too. He sent someone to deliver a chest of things, saying it was a congratulatory gift for Shu'er, along with a letter for me. The letter read, Qingrong, you won. I admit defeat. If you ever want to come back to the Marquis' manor, you're welcome anytime. If not, so be it. I folded the letter and used it to light the stove. I'd already signed the divorce papers myself, and had the capital's official matchmaker witness it. Gu Mingzhang finally signed as well. From then on, we went our separate ways. I never concerned myself with the Gu family's affairs again. I heard the old lady was bedridden, still muttering that she never should have let the Shen family's marriage proposal come through. The second branch split a few shops among themselves and went their separate ways. Gu Yufu was still living in the nunnery. A few days ago, she sent someone to bring me a pair of shoe soles she'd stitched herself. I didn't accept them, only sent back the words, "Take care of yourself." The day Shu'er returned, I went to the city gate to meet her. She wore her official robes, riding on horseback, a squad of guards behind her. Mother, I'm home. I patted her back, laughing so hard tears streamed down my face. That night, she stayed in my little courtyard. We squeezed onto the same couch and talked for half the night. Then, when the conversation turned to Shenjingxiu, she suddenly fell quiet. Mother, I remember now. What happened in my last life wasn't a dream. When he forced that medicine on me, he said something. He said, "Gu Shuqing, you're too capable. As long as you're alive, I'll never sleep easy. So I'm going to make you die." I held her hand. This life, he won't even have a place to sleep. Shu'er smiled, her eyes curving into crescents. Right. The grass on his grave should be 3 feet tall by now. Outside the window, the sky was turning pale with the first light of dawn. A new day was about to begin.